Hello, friends. Welcome to our little breathwork class. I thought instead of looking at me, because there's really not a lot to see when we're doing a breathwork class, instead I would just have you look at my view. So I live just outside of Wenatchee in a little area called Malaga, and I'm very fortunate that this is our view every single day. I don't think we'll get the golden hour while I'm recording this, but I did just see a heron fly by, so hopefully he'll come back. Usually he lands right kind of in the center of the screen. He lands on our little beachy area, so we'll see about that. So for today, for our class, we're going to be inquisitive with our breath, and I'm going to invite you to really participate in this. You know, I always say when I'm teaching the yoga classes, if you can take anything from the classes, I would honestly just wish that you would be able to take breathing. When you can control your breath, which is actually one of the very few things in our life that we can control, you can actually affect your mood, you can affect stress, you can affect anger, you can move out of fight or flight, you can move into rest and digest. Often when we are frustrated, if things feel overwhelming, if we can honestly just draw our awareness to breathing and taking 10 mindful breaths in and mindful breaths out, that usually will diffuse most situations. So I always want to encourage people to participate in this practice. For our practice today, we're going to be laying down. It's going to be inquisitive. So I'm going to invite you to find a space that you can lay down. Maybe grab a pillow for under your head that might feel more comfortable. So feel free to take a moment or two just to gather those things. Maybe let others know to maybe not disturb you right in this moment. While you're doing that, I do want to remind you that I have a couple of dogs. You may see them out running on the lawn. That's no big deal. What I'm hoping is that you don't hear them barking. Sometimes other dogs start barking and then there's a whole chiming in choir of pups out there. So I'm gonna cross my fingers, hope that's not the case for today, but just a little heads up, I'm gonna apologize in advance if that does happen. Now, if you've gathered the space that you're going to be in, I'm gonna invite you, before you lay down completely, maybe set up your space, but maybe once you've done that, just take a full body stretch as you're standing. Maybe bring your arms up over your head, maybe clasp hands, maybe find a little side bend. Next breath in, maybe come back up to that standing position with arms overhead. And as you exhale, maybe side bend to the opposite side. Inhale, come back to center. Exhale, maybe bend your knees and fold forward, hinging at the hips. Let your knees be as bent as they need to be. On your next inhale, halfway lift. That just straightens the knees. Maybe palms are on the shins. Exhale, fold forward. Let all of the air out. Inhale, rise all the way back up. Take your time. Arms are going to be uplifted. On your exhale, bring your hands down to your side. Just take a moment, finding any distractions that may be taking up space in the head, and just acknowledge them one by one. And then give yourself permission just to allow them to leave the mind, leave the room, leave the space. Now, traditionally, we would set an intention, and maybe your intention today is based on slowing down and becoming more aware, just aware of the experience that you are having as a living human being. Maybe giving yourself permission to try something new, to pay attention to the breath. And as we prepare for this, before we come down to the ground, maybe offering gratitude for this gift of breath, this beautiful, exquisite gift of breath. Acknowledging that right now in this moment, someone is taking their last breath. Maybe acknowledging in this moment that someone is taking their first breath. And again, just offering gratitude. When you're ready, come on down to your space, whatever that's going to look like. Once you land, again, maybe take a full body stretch. Get yourself comfortable. Refix the pillow under your head if needed. And then from here, I'm going to invite you to bend your knees so that feet are on the floor. Again, take any adjustments that you need. So our inquiry for our breathwork practice today is, where do I breathe? And the purpose of this inquiry is to become more aware of where you breathe. As I guide you to place your hands on your body during this practice, I want you to use gentle but firm pressure. The amount of pressure you would use to press a stamp onto an envelope, that's about right. Now that you feel comfortable, I want to invite you to place one hand on your belly, slightly above your navel, and one hand on your chest, near the top of your breastbone. Begin to notice how your breath is rising and falling under your hands. As you investigate the following questions, remember there's no right or wrong answer. Be inquisitive and withhold any judgments you have about your breathing until later. Without altering your breath, does one hand rise more than the other? Do you feel more movement in your chest or in your belly? Does one hand rise before the other, or does the breath arise in both places at the same time? When you have a good idea of how you're breathing, let both of your arms come down beside you, about a foot away from your hips with palms turned up. As I direct you to place your hands on different parts of your body, I want to remind you to press gently but firmly in each area. And wherever you touch, allow your breathing to emanate from that place. Rather than lifting the body mechanically, let your breathing be like a conversation with your hands. As you feel pressure on these different areas, relax and wait for the vitality of the breath to emerge rather than mechanically forcing the movement. In the beginning, it's better to allow the breath to come in and out of the mouth. This will make the movement of the breath bigger and easier to perceive. Also, if you tend to control your breath, breathing in and out of your mouth will free up the breath process. Allow your jaw to hang slightly open so that you can let any sounds or sighs release on the outgoing breath. Feel free, though, to explore breathing in and out of your nose during any part of the following exercise. We're going to start with the lower abdomen. Now place your hand on your belly and broaden the fingers of one hand and then press firmly on your lower abdomen. And let your breath begin to rise in this area. Notice if this movement feels familiar or unfamiliar. Is it easy to breathe here? Or does it feel like an effort? We're going to take a few minutes exploring how the breath moves in this part of your body. As you start to lighten the pressure of the hand, continue to breathe in the area you've just touched. And can you focus all of your breath here without any help? We're going to move on to diaphragmatic movement. We're going to move to the lower rib cage. We're gonna move the hands so that your thumbs wrap around the lower rib cage with the fingers facing each other. So think about the side of the body as though you're gonna move your hands down. Almost think about if you were standing with your hands on your hips, right? So your hips are going to be down a little bit further. You'd want to just move them up just so that we can kind of feel like that C of like the fingers and the thumbs, that like almost half circle that the hand naturally makes. You should be able to feel the thumbs kind of towards the back of the rib cage, but on those lower ribs. And then your fingers are going to be separated, but they're going to be pointing towards one another. And then once you feel comfortable with that, you're going to start to breathe into this space. Start to notice the breath beginning to rise in this area. Starting to become aware of your skin making contact with your own hands. So even if you're wearing a shirt or an article of clothing, I want you to maybe allow that article of clothing to mentally disappear and just think about your hand and your skin touching and the movement of the breath in this space. I want you to be mindful. I want you to allow the movement to be felt throughout the sides of the rib cage as well as the front. And then begin to notice, does this movement feel familiar or unfamiliar? Is it easy to breathe here, or does it feel like an effort? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm going to take a few minutes exploring how the breath moves in this part of your body. As you start to remove the pressure of the hands, of the fingers, of the thumb, continue to breathe into the area that you've just touched. And then can you breathe here without any help? we're going to move on to intercostal movement. And this is movement from the rib cage. You're going to take your hands and move them up from the lower rib cage, moving them all the way up so that the thumbs are pressed, maybe not directly into the armpits, because you want your hands to be able to rest on your rib cage, more of the larger part of the rib cage. But ideally, thumbs are in the direction or near the armpits. You'll allow your hands to just place onto your chest. And while your hands are on your chest, you are going to focus on the rib cage itself. So we'll get to the chest movement in the next section. So we want to try to be mindful that we're not placing all of our awareness on the chest area. I think naturally the way our hands want to land here, there's, I think, just a natural given that we would be paying attention to the chest. But if anything, maybe point the hands down a little, maybe fingers are pointed maybe under the chest. That might allow for more mindfulness of where we're sending the breath. So again, I want you to think about just the natural breath, like if you're filling the lungs with breath, you start to feel the rib cage expanding, and as you empty the breath, you start to feel the rib cage contracting. That's what we're going for here. But if we're adding that layer of placing our hands onto the skin or onto the body, it's just going to allow a deeper awareness of that section. And as you start to get comfortable with your hand placement, I want you to start to allow all the breath to move to this space. And then just explore what it feels like to breathe into the sides of the rib cage. And again, is this a familiar or unfamiliar movement to you? Is it easy, or does the act of breathing here take great concentration? Release your jaw, soften the jaw. And then I want you to start to notice. Can you feel the spaces between your ribs expanding on your inhale and retracting on your exhale? And then sending all of your breath to this space. Focusing all of your awareness to breathing in and out of the rib cage. We'll be here for a few minutes exploring. And then softening the pressure of the hands. Continue to breathe in this area. Maybe removing the hand. And just breathing into the rib cage. And breathing out of the rib cage. And then from here, we'll move to the upper chest movement. I want you to take your hands to the center of the upper chest, just below the collarbones on either side of the sternum. So one hand on each side. Your hands shouldn't press down towards your belly, but instead they should just have a naturally, slightly upward movement towards the throat. And I want you just to press your fingertips against the upper chest. I want you to relax the jaw, soften the eyes, and then allow the vitality of your breath to arise from this part of yourself. Does this movement feel familiar or unfamiliar? Allowing fingertips again to just gently press into the skin. And deep breaths here. And do you find yourself struggling to breathe in this area? Or is it quite easy? I'll take a few minutes exploring how the breath moves in this part of your body, maybe noticing how the skin lifts towards the fingertips as you breathe in. And how the skin melts away from the fingertips as you breathe out. Starting to loosen the pressure of the hand and perhaps allowing the hands to move away from the body. Can you continue to breathe in this area of the chest without any help, without being touched? from here, we're going to move on to cranial movement. I'm going to ask you to place your hands around the sides of your skull in any position that's both comfortable for your hands and for your head and neck. So that might be interlacing the fingers and having the head rest on the fingers that are interlaced. I know for my personal practice, I actually prefer the fingers to be further apart when they're interlaced, so almost like fingertips are touching fingertips. So it's just whatever feels best for you here. And once you've come to that space, maybe on your next exhale, just soften in your shoulders a bit. And then drawing your awareness back to your head and to your neck. Imagine your brain is like a light bulb and glowing bright on the inhalation and dimming on the exhalation. Feel your cranium, especially in the back of your skull, expanding and broadening as you breathe in and condensing as you breathe out. Allow the full weight of your head to release into the floor. Especially notice whether you can feel the back of the skull broaden and soften with each exhale. Relaxing the eyes, relaxing the jaw. Start to take the pressure away from the hands, maybe even move the hands away. Continue to breathe into this area where your hands just were. Now we're going to return to the beginning. Just as we did at the beginning of this inquiry, place one hand on your lower abdomen and one hand on your chest. And then try to be specific in answering the following questions. Do you notice more movement underneath either hand? Has your breath pattern changed in any way? Is the movement of your breath more equally distributed between the top and bottom halves of your torso? Has the quality of your breath changed in any way? Can you describe the difference between when you started the inquiry and now? Do you feel different? And if so, how? And I want you to take a few moments to relax. When you're ready, roll on your side and take your time. And then at your leisure, you'll sit up. Continuing with the inquiry. Where did it feel difficult to focus awareness and expand the breath? Where were you most adept? I want to remind you, it's not a time to interpret or evaluate any of your observations. It's just simply a time to notice. So now that you have a general idea of your own breathing, you might be thinking, but what's the best way to breathe? And the best way to breathe is the way that supports the activity that you're doing. So if you are at work and you had to present a proposal to your boss, that is going to be very different breathing than if you're going to sing your child a lullaby. Free and effective breathing does have certain characteristics. And some of these are oscillation. And the whole body oscillates and moves slightly during free breathing. And this movement arises effortlessly and not from suppressing movement somewhere else. The oscillation has a way of traveling sequentially through the body from the center to the periphery. The diaphragmatic. The breath arises predominantly through the action of the central diaphragm rather than through the action of more external secondary respiratory muscles, which are higher up in the body. So just kind of noticing that natural breath in and out. Is it starting in the center where the diaphragm is? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Just becoming aware, starting to notice things, finding a curiosity. Internal origination. The breath arises from within rather than being pulled inside mechanically by using the outer muscles of the body. Instead of breathing, we are breathed. So rather than focusing on breathing in, like as though you're pulling air and then allowing it to transform into breath as it travels into wherever it's going to land, the internal origination would be the breath begins inside. So instead of breathing in, you're already breathed. Multi-directional. The breath expands in all directions, radiating out, just as a full dandelion flower radiates from its core. That's a beautiful thing to imagine. So if you've seen a dandelion, I don't know if you've ever really paid attention to this, but these little dandelions that essentially are weeds really are very beautiful on their own. If you go out into a field or in your backyard and you see a yellow dandelion, if you watch it at night, it will actually close up. The next day it'll open again, become yellow, and that evening it'll close up. And I'll do that every day for about, I want to say 5 days. And the final day when it opens up, that's when it becomes the little wishing thing that you blow on when you're a child, or you teach your children to do, and you say, make a wish, and you blow it. Those are all the dandelions, so that's multi-directional. Another characteristic of free breathing is calm and regular. The breath has a feeling of being and creating calm in the body and mind. Its rhythm is regular most of the time. Another is 2-3 pause rhythm. So during quiet respiration, it's normal for your inhale to be about 2 seconds and your exhale to be about 3 seconds, followed by a pause. More simply, you breathe out a little longer than you breathe in. So just starting to notice these things. And then flexible. Just as waves arise in endless variation in the sea, the breath arises with endless variation and adaptability. The breath changes as our thoughts, feelings, and movement change. So we experience all of these, but maybe just starting to pay a little bit more attention to what you're experiencing, especially in the quiet and in the calm, or even earlier, as I stated, like when you're feeling anxious or stressed. And then finally, effortless breathing. The act of breathing is filled with a sense of ease and relaxation. That's like that beautiful breath when we're sleeping. It is always an honor, a privilege, a joy to guide you in these practices. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope that you are able to take some time, especially maybe over this next week, just being mindful of drawing awareness to your breath. And I look forward to our next session together. Bye, friends.